He said his 50th birthday party was canceled. A work crisis, he claimed. He lied. The party was still happening at the most exclusive venue in Austin, and he'd replaced me on the guest list with his 28-year-old secretary. They planned to announce their new future and leave me with nothing. They didn't know I was bringing my own gift, a gift to ensure this was the last thing he would ever celebrate. The glow of the iPad cast a pale blue light across our dark living room. I was triple-checking the caterer's invoice for Gregory's 50th birthday party. It was meant to be the event of the season in Austin. 200 guests, a 9-piece band flown in from New Orleans, a custom ice luge shaped like the Vector Shift Dynamics logo. We were holding it at our villa, a sprawling glass and steel monstrosity overlooking Lake Travis, and every detail had been my domain for the last 6 months. The front door clicked open and shut, heavier than usual. I looked up. Gregory stood in the entryway, his custom-tailored suit looking rumpled, his face a mask of pure stress. He wasn't just tired, he looked hunted. "Greg." I set the iPad down. "What's wrong?" "You're home early." He loosened his tie with a sharp tug, throwing his briefcase onto the marble floor. "The party's off. Maya." I blinked. "Off." "What do you mean?" "Off, Greg. The deposits are non-refundable. The invitations." "I don't care about the deposits," he snapped, his voice tight. "Vector Shift is facing an emergency audit, a full-blown top-to-bottom crisis. We have to cancel everything. Now." My stomach clenched. As a strategy consultant myself, I understood what an emergency audit implied. It was serious. Still, the whiplash of the decision was stunning. "Everything. The whole party, Greg. This is your 50th. "It's not the time." "Maya." He paced into the kitchen, pulling open the fridge and staring blankly inside. "Work comes first. It has to. You know that." He was right. I did know that. Vector Shift Dynamics was his baby. Our baby. Once upon a time. His declaration was final. Absolute. The disappointment was a cold, heavy stone in my gut. But I pushed it down. "Okay," I said, following him. "Okay, I'll start making the calls in the morning." I put my hand on his arm. He didn't flinch, but he didn't lean in. Either. "I'm sorry, Greg. This must be a nightmare for you. We'll do a quiet dinner instead. Just us. Your favorite steak." "Yeah, fine," he muttered, his eyes already locked on the screen of his phone, thumbs flying. "That sounds fine. Honey." He didn't look at me. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone, unwinding the elaborate event I had spent months building. I felt humiliated calling the caterer, the florist, the band, spinning some vague story about a family emergency. Gregory, meanwhile, stayed locked in his home office, the muffled sounds of his voice tense, urgent leaking from under the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. The disappointment had faded, replaced by a low, humming anxiety. The crisis felt real, but his dismissal of the party, of my effort, felt too easy. Around 2 a.m, I gave up trying to rest and went downstairs for some water. The shared iPad was still on the coffee table, screen dark. I picked it up, intending to check the weather. An email notification was sitting on the lock screen. It was from Pinnacle Events. I frowned. That wasn't one of my vendors. I unlocked the iPad. The subject line read, "Final confirmation, Greg's 50th at the Azure Skyloft." My blood went cold. I tapped it open. It was a brief confirmation, a final logistical check for an event scheduled for this Saturday. His birthday. The Azure Skyloft. That wasn't our house. The Azure Skyloft was the most expensive, exclusive rooftop venue in the city, a place with a 6-month waiting list and a view that screamed new money. It was the opposite of the personal, at-home celebration I had planned. My hands were shaking. This had to be a mistake, a backup venue I didn't know about. I navigated out of the email and opened our joint bank account app. I scrolled through the recent transactions. my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. There it was. 3 days ago. A single, massive wire transfer. $75,000. Paid to Pinnacle Events LLC. I waited until he came out of his office, his face pale with what I assumed was exhaustion from work. Gregory. I kept my voice soft, neutral. I was just looking at the iPad. I saw an email from a company called Pinnacle Events. He froze, just for a second. It was almost imperceptible, a tightening in his shoulders. Then he turned to me, forcing a weary smile. "Oh, that," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "God, I forgot to tell you." He walked over, taking the iPad from my hands and closing the cover, as if shutting down the conversation itself. "That's a corporate event. Maya, it's not a party. A corporate event at the Skyloft for $75,000. He laughed, a dry, airy sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Right. The board is insisting. They borrowed, that's the word they used, my birthday as an excuse to throw a massive client appreciation gala. It's all about optics, showing the clients we're stable, even with this audit nonsense." He was so smooth. The story was perfect, plausible. "It's going to be awful," he continued, slipping his arm around my waist. "Just a room full of boring old guys in suits, talking about quarterly projections. You would hate it. Trust me." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. It was a cold press of lips against my skin. "You don't need to come," he said softly. "Honestly, I'd rather you didn't. Just let me get through this, and I promise, I'll make it up to you. We'll take that trip to Italy next month." He smiled again, and I smiled back, the muscles in my face feeling stiff and unfamiliar. He walked upstairs to bed, presumably satisfied. I stayed in the living room, the echo of his words hanging in the silent, dark air. It wasn't just a lie. It was a performance. It was practiced, polished, and delivered with the effortless ease of a man who had told many of them. The lie was too smooth, and a $75,000 lie wasn't just a lie. It was a secret, and I was going to find out what it was. Gregory's feigned snoring from the master bedroom was a low rumble through the house, but it couldn't lull me into a state of peace. Sleep was impossible. His words, "You would hate it. Trust me," echoed in my mind, layered with the cold, practiced ease of his performance. I sat at my own desk, the cursor blinking on a blank search bar. My office felt alien, the accolades and strategic planning awards on the wall seeming to mock me. I typed Vector Shift Dynamics Azure Skyloft into the search engine. Nothing, not a single public mention, no press release, no event calendar listing. If this was a massive client appreciation gala, it was the most secretive one in Austin history. Corporate events, especially of this scale, always left some digital footprint, a sponsorship mention, a save the date on a business journal. This had nothing. The lie was solidifying, growing heavier. I went back to the email on the iPad, Pinnacle Events. I opened a new tab and typed in their website. It was slick, minimalist, and full-on luxury. Galleries of stunning weddings and corporate galas, all dripping with money. And right in the top corner, a small, discreet link, client portal. My heart rate kicked up. A login screen appeared. Username. Password. I stared at it. This was Gregory's domain. His secret. What would he use? I tried his standard work passwords. Denied. I tried our anniversary. Denied. I tried his birthday. Denied. I leaned back, closing my eyes, trying to think like him. Gregory, at his core, was a man of monumental ego. He believed he was a titan of industry, a self-made genius. The party was for his 50th birthday, his golden celebration. I typed in the username gthorn for the password. I tried the one he used for his fantasy football league, the one I always rolled my eyes at, the password that encapsulated his entire personality. I typed Greg the Great 50, I hit enter. The screen refreshed. Welcome, Gregory. I was in. My breath caught. It was all there. Not a client gala. The main event file was titled Gregory Thorne's Golden Celebration. I clicked on the master planning document. Budgets, timelines, vendor contracts. My eyes scanned the files, my mind struggling to keep up. Floor plans, seating charts. A menu that cost more per plate than my first car payment. I found the guest list. 200 names. I scrolled through them. Our friends, his family from Connecticut, my sister, key investors, the mayor, half of the Austin City Council, everyone we knew, everyone who mattered in our professional and personal lives. I scrolled again, and again. I was not on it. My name, Maya Thorne, was absent. I told myself it was a mistake, an oversight. He was handling this. Maybe he just assumed I would be there with him. Then I clicked on the security protocols folder. My stomach dropped so hard I felt the bile rise in my throat. It was a memo to the venue's head of security. Client is high profile, strict access control required. Gregory Thorne and Chloe Vance are the only parties approved for main entrance access and back-end vendor coordination. Security team must ensure Maya Thorne is not granted access to the venue under any circumstances. See attached photo for identification. Attached was a smiling photo of me from our last vacation. Chloe Vance, Chloe, his executive assistant, a quiet, efficient, 28-year-old who I had personally picked out from a stack of resumes 3 years ago, the girl who I had advised on what to wear to the last shareholders' meeting, the girl who called me Mrs. Thorne with such respectful deference. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. Ensure Maya Thorne is not granted access. This was not an oversight. This was a direct order. I was being purposefully barred from my husband's 50th birthday party. I navigated back to the main file directory, my vision tunneling. There was one last folder I had not opened. It was labeled, innocuously, Special Announcement. I clicked it. Inside was a single document, GT50 Press Release Draft V4.doc. I opened it. The document was formatted on VectorShift Dynamics letterhead. The headline was sickeningly cheerful. For immediate release, Gregory Thorne, founder of VectorShift Dynamics, is thrilled to celebrate his 50th birthday and announce his future with his new partner, Chloe Vance. I read the line. I read it 5 times. My brain refused to process the words. New partner. The text below was corporate speak mixed with poisonous intimacy. It spoke of new beginnings, of personal and professional synergy, and a bold new direction for the next 50 years. It detailed how Ms. Vance was not just his personal partner, but would also be taking on a new, elevated role within the company. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving my skin icy cold. I was not just being uninvited. I was being replaced. This was not a party. It was not a client gala. It was a public execution. He was planning to stand on that stage in front of everyone we knew and announce his affair, announce his new life. He was going to publicly, humiliatingly erase me from his life, all while I was supposed to be sitting at home, dutifully believing his story about an emergency audit. The $75,000 event was not a celebration. It was a coup, my coup, and he was using our joint account to pay for it. The nausea I had felt earlier returned, violent and overwhelming. I stumbled to the bathroom, bracing myself over the toilet, and was violently ill. The image of him kissing my forehead, his cold lips, his practiced lie, "You would hate it, trust me," flashed in my mind. He was not just a liar, he was a monster, and he was planning to destroy me. I sank to the floor in my office, the press release burning on the screen. New partner. The words were clinical, brutal. My mind flashed back 10 years to a crowded coffee shop. My father had just passed away, and his bequest had landed in my account, $500,000. Gregory sat across from me, his eyes electric with an idea he called vector shift dynamics. He was a brilliant sales engineer, the best I'd ever seen. But he had no capital. I had the capital. "It's ours, Maya, forever," he'd said, covering my hand with his. His hand was warm then. He was so convincing. "You're not just investing in a company, you're investing in us. This is our legacy." I wrote him the check. Against my lawyer's advice, against the executor's advice, I believed in him. I believed in us. That $500,000, my inheritance, was the seed from which the entire $10 billion valuation of Vector Shift grew, and I was now barred from the building. The last 6 months clicked into place with sickening clarity. The sudden obsession with his appearance, his teeth were suddenly, aggressively white. The new collection of obscenely expensive watches he'd bought on sale. The late nights at the office. The sudden business trips to San Francisco, where we had no clients. It was all her. It was all Chloe. The strategist in me took over, moving past the nausea. The part of my brain that I used for my own clients, the cold, analytical part, kicked in. The event portal was what they wanted seen. I needed what they didn't. I left the iPad and went to my laptop, logging into our shared home server. It was a digital archive of our entire life taxes, mortgages, old vacation photos, and, as I discovered after 10 minutes of searching a supposedly archived folder, a hidden email account. He had created a private address he used only for her. He must have thought I'd never look. He thought I was stupid. The first email was dated 1 year ago today. An entire year. I scrolled, my stomach hollowing out. It started as a sordid, desperate affair. Flirtatious messages, then explicit photos. Then it evolved. It became logistical. It became a plan. I saw the entire architecture of my destruction laid bare. The party wasn't just an announcement. It was phase 1. Phase 2 was scheduled for the morning after. While I was meant to be reeling from the public humiliation, a process server would arrive at our house to serve me with divorce papers. I found the email from Gregory to his lawyer, dated 3 weeks ago. "Serve her at 10 a.m. on Sunday. She should be compliant by then." I kept reading. I found the message I knew must exist. It was from Chloe, sent 2 nights ago. "Greg, I'm nervous. The party is a huge expense. Are you sure she can't touch the company money? What about her original investment?" I held my breath, waiting for the reply. It appeared a minute later. Gregory's response: "Don't worry your pretty head about it. My lawyer has it locked down. I had her sign documents 5 years ago during the Series B funding, folded into a stack of standard tax filings. She doesn't legally own a single share. Her seed money was legally structured as a gift years ago. She has no claim. She gets the house, which we're mortgaged to the hilt on, and that's it. A gift. My father's legacy. My investment. The foundation of his entire empire. A gift." I closed the laptop. The coldness I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by something white-hot. I was not just being cheated on. This was not a midlife crisis. This was a liquidation, a hostile takeover of my entire life. He had planned, with meticulous, strategic detail, to strip me of my money, my company, my social standing, and my dignity, all in one 48-hour period. He wasn't just leaving me for a younger woman. He was erasing me. I waited for the tears. I sat on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, my throat raw, and waited for the gut-wrenching sobs that were supposed to come. They never did. The space where the shock and grief should have lived was hollow. In its place, something else was crystallizing. It was a cold, sharp, terrifying clarity. An Arctic calm settled over me, and my hands, which had been shaking, became perfectly still. Gregory had not just betrayed me. This was not a simple, messy affair. This was a strategic plan. He had meticulously, systematically, planned my complete destruction. He was using my own money, the $500,000 from my father, the money that built his company to finance my public execution. He intended to strip me of my financial stake, my social standing, and my dignity, all in one clean, brutal weekend. The press release had called Chloe his new partner. That was a lie. I was his partner. Chloe was his replacement. This was a purge, a hostile takeover. I was the aging asset being liquidated to make room for the new acquisition. I stood up, my legs steady, and walked back into my office. On the bookshelf, facing my desk, was our wedding photo. We were in Italy, 10 years ago, framed by Tuscan sunlight. We were laughing, and he was looking at me with an intensity I mistook for love. I see now it was just acquisition. I stared at the smiling man in the frame. That man was dead. He had been dead for at least a year. The thing that slept in my bed. The man who had kissed my forehead just hours ago and fed me a plausible, polished lie was not my husband. He was my enemy. And you do not cry for an enemy. You do not mourn them. You anticipate their next move. You analyze their weaknesses, and you dismantle them. He wanted a special announcement. He wanted to stand on a stage and unveil his new future. Fine. I would give him an announcement he would never forget. I was not going to pack a bag. I was not going to run to my sister, weeping and broken. That was what he expected. That was the compliant wife he was planning to serve divorce papers to on Sunday morning. He was counting on my emotional breakdown. He had failed to account for my strategic mind. I was going to go to his party. He wanted to celebrate his 50th birthday. I would be there, and I was going to bring the perfect gift. My hand was steady as I picked up my cell phone. I did not search Google for divorce lawyer. I searched for Austin's most ruthless financial litigator. The first name on the list jumped out at me. Elias Vance. I stared at the surname. Vance. The same as his 28-year-old mistress. The universe, it seemed, had a flair for irony. It was perfect. A sign. I dialed the firm's after-hours emergency line. A sleepy paralegal answered. Vance Litigation. How can I help? I need an emergency appointment with Elias Vance, I said. My voice was not my own. It was low, clear, and cold. Tomorrow morning, first available. Ma'am, Mr. Vance is booked for the next 2 weeks. You need to wake him up, I interrupted, the ice in my voice cutting her off. Tell him this is regarding a multi-million-dollar case of corporate fraud, asset embezzlement, and fraudulent conveyance. Tell him it concerns vector shift dynamics. I let the name of the company hang in the air. Tell him Maya Thorne is calling. Elias Vance's office was not a place for comfort. It was a weapon, all dark mahogany, leather-bound books that looked unread but expensive, and a towering window overlooking the state capitol. It was designed to intimidate. Elias himself was in his late 50s, with a sharp, tailored suit and sharper eyes. He looked like a vulture who had just spotted a meal. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice steady. I had not slept. I had only showered, dressed in my most severe business attire, and driven. Thank you for seeing me. Elias, he corrected, his voice a low gravel. My paralegal was rattled. You mentioned multi-million-dollar fraud. You mentioned vector shift. He gestured to the chair opposite his massive desk. Sit and talk. I sat, but I didn't get comfortable. First, your surname. Are you related, in any way, to a woman named Chloe Vance? His eyes, which had been scanning me, focused with new intensity. Vance is a common name, but no, I am not. Should I know her? She's my husband's 28-year-old executive assistant, I said, opening the encrypted laptop I had brought. And the woman he is publicly announcing as his new partner this Saturday after securing me from the venue. I see. A flicker of something not surprise. Perhaps appreciation crossed his face. That makes things cleaner. He motioned to the laptop. Show me. I did not speak as a wife. I spoke as the consultant I was. I laid out the architecture of the case, the formation of the company, the wire transfer of my $500,000 inheritance, the tax documents he'd had me sign 5 years ago. I then opened the event portal, showing him the security memo. Finally, I opened the hidden email account. For an hour, the only sound in the office was the quiet click of my trackpad as I navigated through a year of my husband's betrayal. When I finished with the email from Gregory to his lawyer, "She has no claim. Her seed money was legally structured as a gift," Elias finally spoke. "He's thorough," he said, and I was alarmed to hear a note of professional respect in his voice. "He's correct, on this front. That document you signed 5 years ago, the one hidden in the Series B funding, it effectively converted your seed money into non-equity, a gift, just as he said. On paper, Mrs. Thorne, you own 0% of Vector Shift Dynamics." I nodded. The Arctic calm was still in place. "I know. But," he said, and he leaned forward, the vulture finally spotting the weakness. "He is also an arrogant, colossal fool." He spun my laptop around to face him, his fingers flying. "This joint account, the one your inheritance was first deposited into, 10 years ago." "Yes," I said. "It's been our primary household account." "Exactly," Elias said. "The legal character of that money, even commingled, is still traceable to your separate property. It established a precedent, and Gregory got sloppy. He's been using this account." He pulled up the last 6 months of statements. My stomach clenched. I saw it. A massive down payment, not for a property I knew, but for a high-rise condo at the Austonian, a wire transfer to a Lexus dealership, tens of thousands of dollars in charges at Cartier and Gucci. Elias was already cross-referencing them with the emails I'd shown him. An email from Chloe. "The keys are in my hand. The view is incredible." A photo of her in a new, white convertible. "This is not just adultery, Mrs. Thorne," Elias said, the warmth gone from his voice, replaced by cold steel. "This is felony-level embezzlement. He is actively using marital assets, funds with a clear traceable link to your inheritance, to enrich a third party. He is buying her cars and her loyalty with your money." He stopped, holding up a hand. "Wait, it's worse than I thought." He turned to his own computer, his fingers pounding the keys, pulling up financial databases I didn't have access to. "This audit he told you about," Elias said, his eyes scanning the screen. "It's not an audit. It's due diligence." "Due diligence for what?" He turned the massive monitor to face me. "Gregory is in the final stages of selling Vector Shift Dynamics to Omnicorp Global, your biggest competitor." The breath left my lungs. The sale. The one thing we had always sworn we would never do. "The deal," Elias said, pointing to a data-stamped filing, "is scheduled to close this Monday, the day after the party." The entire plan slammed into me, the sheer, brutal genius of it. "He's cashing out," I whispered. "Completely," Elias confirmed, his face grim. "A $10 billion acquisition. The money lands in his private, non-marital accounts on Monday. After he's publicly humiliated you on Saturday and served you divorce papers on Sunday, he leaves you with a mortgaged house, a mountain of tax debt from his fraudulent expenditures, and a company that, by Monday afternoon, will no longer exist. He was leaving me with nothing. He was liquidating me." "We have to stop that sale," I said, my voice barely a hiss. "We will," Elias said. He was already on his feet, grabbing his phone. "This evidence of embezzlement, of actively dissipating marital assets in bad faith, is exactly what we need. I can get an emergency ex parte hearing with a judge this afternoon. We can get a TRO, a temporary restraining order freezing everything." He was pacing now, energized. "The company, the sale, his personal accounts, your joint accounts. We can freeze every last dollar." He stopped and looked at me, the final piece clicking into place. "But to do that, we have to serve him. We have to physically place the order in his hands. And a man this close to a $10 billion payday is probably impossible to find. I felt the corner of my mouth pull into a smile. It was not a nice expression. It felt sharp and cold and wonderful. No, he's not, I said. He's not impossible to find. Elias raised an eyebrow. He's making it very easy, I said, standing up. He's scheduled his own execution. I know exactly when and exactly where. He's going to be on a stage, under a spotlight, in front of 200 of his closest friends. I met the lawyer's gaze. We'll serve him at his birthday party. I walked back into the house that evening, the heavy front door clicking shut with a sound of finality. The Arctic calm in my veins had to be disguised, pushed down beneath layers of a performance I had been rehearsing in the car. I had to become the woman Gregory expected, the dutiful, slightly disappointed, but ultimately understanding wife. He was in his office, the door ajar, the low murmur of his voice audible. He was probably talking to her. I waited in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water I didn't need, my hands perfectly steady. When he finally emerged, he looked wary, as if bracing for another round of questions about the party. "Gregory," I said, my voice soft, pitched to sound weary. He stopped, his phone in his hand. "Hey, I wanted to apologize," I said, looking down at the marble countertop. I could feel his surprise. "Apologize for what?" "For this morning, when you told me about the party." I looked up, forcing a tired, resigned smile. "I was just so wrapped up in the details, the canapes and the guest list. I wasn't thinking about the pressure you're under. This whole audit sounds like a nightmare." I let out a heavy sigh, a perfect imitation of concern. I know how important the company is. Work always comes first. I was being selfish. The relief that washed over his face was so profound it was almost sickening. He visibly relaxed, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Oh, Maya, honey, no, I'm sorry. It's just that it's a nightmare. You're right." "I know," I said, walking over and placing my hand on his arm. His suit felt stiff beneath my fingers. I fought the urge to pull away, and I think I'm just adding to the stress. I've been so on edge. This was the critical moment. I turned my head, as if hesitant to make the suggestion. "I was thinking, you remember my friend, Sarah from college. She's been trying to get me to go on a spa weekend with her in Santa Fe for months. Her sister just canceled on their trip. And it's this weekend, your birthday weekend." I let that hang in the air. A perfect, unfortunate coincidence. "I know the timing is awful," I hurried on, "but maybe it's for the best. It would get me out of your hair. You could focus completely on your work, on that awful client gala you have to deal with, and I could just go clear my head. Honestly, I think I really need it." Gregory's face lit up. It was not the subtle relief of a man unburdened. It was the naked, unfiltered joy of a man whose final complication had just evaporated. "Maya, that's a brilliant idea," he said, his voice brimming with a false sincerity that matched my own. "A fantastic idea. You deserve it. God knows you've been working hard enough on this. On everything." "Are you sure?" I asked, widening my eyes. "On your birthday." "It's not even a real birthday, honey," he said, already on a roll. "It's a stupid corporate function. Please, go. I'll feel better knowing you're relaxing and taking care of yourself. We'll celebrate properly when you're back." That night, he even helped me pack. He pulled my small carry-on from the top of the closet, beaming. "You'll need your hiking boots. Right, and that new cashmere wrap." He was an eager participant in his own deception. "This is just what we both need," he said, zipping the bag closed for me. The next morning, Gregory left for a day of crisis meetings at the office. I knew from the tracker I'd put in his briefcase a small gift from a security consultant client last year that he was actually at Chloe's new high-rise condo. The moment his car cleared the driveway, my house became a war room. Elias Vance arrived, Not with a team of lawyers, but with a single hawk-eyed forensic accountant named Maria. For 6 straight hours, we worked. Maria, with a quiet ferocity, tore through Gregory's finances, turning my suspicions into hard, actionable data. "He's an amateur," she said, her first words in an hour. She pointed to the screen. "He used the joint account for the condo down payment. He used it for the Lexus lease. He even used it for the $75,000 event fee. He commingled the funds so badly, he's left a trail a first-year associate could follow. It's not just dissipation of assets. It's textbook embezzlement. It's fraud." Elias was pacing my office, his energy electric. "The judge signed the TRO this morning," he said. "The asset freeze is ready. But this is the canon. We don't just serve Gregory, we educate the board." We spent the afternoon creating 10 immaculate navy blue binders. Each one contained a summary of Maria's findings, copies of the wire transfers to Chloe's condo, the car lease in her name, and the gift emails, a portfolio of his arrogance. "The board members are all invited to this party," I said. "They'll be there." "Perfect." Elias grinned. "They get served along with the appetizers." After they left, I had one more call to make. I sat at my desk, the stack of binders like bombs waiting to be detonated. I dialed the number from memory. "Investigative desk. Sarah Jensen speaking." "Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "It's Maya Thorne." There was a pause. Sarah was the sharpest, most relentless financial reporter at the Austin Business Journal. We had served on a charity board together. "Maya, this is a surprise. What can I do for you?" "I have a story for you," I said. "A big one. Off the record, until tomorrow night." I heard the distinct sound of a keyboard clicking. "I'm listening." "I have the details on the fall of one of Austin's most beloved tech CEOs. I have proof of massive corporate embezzlement, bad faith negotiations on a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, and a personal scandal that will guarantee a cover story." The typing stopped. Whose name? Gregory Thorne. The silence on the line was profound. "You're joking," she said. "Gregory Thorne is the city's golden boy. He's untouchable." "He's a fraud," I said, the words clean and cold. "And he's about to be insolvent. I'm giving you the exclusive, but you have to do exactly as I say. I need you at the Azure Skyloft tomorrow night. His 50th birthday party." I heard that was canceled. "It wasn't. It's just invite only," I said. "Bring a photographer. Be discreet. But when I step up to the microphone, you hit record. You'll know the signal." It was Wednesday, 3 days until the party. I was sitting in my car in a nondescript parking lot 2 blocks away from the Austonian, watching a small blue dot on my phone's GPS screen. The blue dot, representing Gregory's briefcase, had not moved from the 27th floor of Chloe's luxury condo all day. He had told me he was in an all-hands-on-deck crisis meeting with the auditors. The lie was so familiar, so mundane. It was almost boring. I did not feel anger watching the blue dot. I felt detached. I was an analyst observing a data point. I spent that day methodically emptying our home. I was not packing clothes. I was transferring assets. I made 4 separate trips to a new, climate-controlled, high-security storage unit rented under my maiden name. With me went my mother's jewelry, my father's original signed letters, all my personal financial records, and every piece of art I had personally purchased. I transferred my personal savings, what little I had kept separate, into a new bank account at a different institution. I was creating a firewall, dismantling the us and extracting the me. The house, with its cold marble and glass walls, already felt like it was not mine. That was fine. He could have the mortgaged shell. The next morning, Thursday, my phone rang. It was Elias. "The judge signed the order," he said. His voice was crisp. No time wasted. "The TRO is active, signed and sealed. The asset freeze is in place, pending service." I closed my eyes, a single sharp breath escaping my lips. The weapon was loaded. The board member packages are ready, I said. My team is on standby for Saturday night. He replied, We have 10 process servers, 1 for each binder, plus the 2 for Thorne and Ms. Vance. It will be a clean, simultaneous operation. How are you holding up? Maya. I'm ready, Elias, I said. Thank you. Good, he said. Now, go get your war paint. He didn't mean it literally, but I took it as such. That afternoon, I drove to the most exclusive boutique in Austin, a place I had always found too ostentatious. I walked past the racks of tasteful beige and subdued navy. A saleswoman glided over. Can I help you find something? Perhaps for a gala? Yes, I said, my voice clear. I need a dress for a party, something that will make it impossible for anyone to look away. I was thinking, red. I found it an hour later. It was not a polite, wine-colored red. It was a screaming, arterial, blood red, a silk sheath that was severe in its cut, unforgiving, and utterly magnificent. It was a statement. It was a declaration of war. I paid for it in cash and told them to burn the garment bag. Friday evening, the night before the party, the night of my flight to Santa Fe. Gregory was practically vibrating with relief. He'd been solicitous all day, a perfect performance of the supportive husband. He insisted on driving me to the airport, my small prop carry-on in the trunk of his Tesla. We stood at the security checkpoint. He was beaming, the picture of a man burdened by work but happy for his wife. The car service will pick you up on Monday. Right, he asked, a little too eagerly. Yes, it's all arranged, I said, smiling back. Good, good. He pulled me into a hug, his arms wrapping around me. For a split second, my body tensed, the sheer revulsion of physical metallic taste in my mouth. Now, you go. Have a wonderful, relaxing time in Santa Fe. You deserve it. I mean it. He kissed me. It was a dry, papery kiss on my cheek, the last one he would ever give me. I pulled back and looked at him. I really looked at him, right in his eyes, memorizing the face of my enemy, the smiling, confident, sociopathic face. And you, I said, my voice soft, my smile perfect. Enjoy your work party. I hope it's everything you've been planning for. He laughed, relieved. It's going to be hell, but I'll get through it. Go, or you'll miss your flight. I won't, I said. You're right. You deserve everything that's coming to you. Gregory. Everything. He heard it as a blessing. He heard it as the words of a supportive, if slightly tired, wife. He didn't see the truth in my eyes. He didn't hear the promise. He waved, still smiling, as I turned and walked toward the TSA line. I went through security. I walked to the gate. I waited until his blue dot on my GPS app was speeding away from the airport. Then I picked up my bag, walked out of the terminal, got into a cab I had waiting, and went to the downtown hotel room I had booked under my old name. The red dress was already there, hanging in the closet. The azure skyloft was a galaxy of glittering lights. 30 stories above Austin, the venue was packed with 200 of the city's most powerful and influential people. Tech founders, state senators, and old money socialites mingled, their laughter drowned out by a string quartet and the clinking of endless champagne glasses. It was the absolute pinnacle of Gregory's ambition. It was the party I had originally planned, only moved to a location that better suited his monumental ego, and paid for with my money. And there, on a small, elevated platform at the front of the room, stood the happy couple. Gregory was magnificent in a tuxedo I had never seen, tailored perfectly to his new, gym-toned body. He looked 10 years younger, reborn. At his side, her hand tucked possessively into his arm, was Chloe Vance. She was wearing a gown of shimmering pearl-white silk. It was cut low, elegant, and so deliberately pale that it was almost a wedding dress. They were the image of a new power couple, glowing under the warm spotlights, accepting the congratulations of the crowd. Gregory tapped the microphone, a high-pitched sound that silenced the room. He raised his glass. "Thank you, everyone," he began, his voice resonating with a deep, practiced confidence. "Thank you all for coming tonight." He smiled, a broad, triumphant expression. 50 years. It's a milestone." He paused, turning his gaze on Chloe, who looked up at him with an adoration that was stomach-turning. "It's a time for reflection," he continued, "a time to assess what's working and what needs to be refreshed. And for me, this isn't an end. For me, tonight is a new beginning." As the room prepared to applaud, I was stepping out of the elevator into the private lobby of the Skyloft. The red dress was a stark column of color against the muted beige marble. The air conditioning was cold, and I felt it raise the skin on my bare arms. Immediately, two large men in black suits, identical headsets in their ears, stepped into my path. They were built like linebackers, their expressions professionally blank. The one in charge held up a tablet. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm afraid this is a private event." "Your name, Maya Thorne," I said. His eyes flickered down to his tablet, and I saw his thumb scroll. I saw him stop at the memo, the one with my smiling vacation photo. His expression didn't change, but his posture did. He had identified the threat. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thorne," he said, the politeness thin and sharp. "You are not on the guest list." "I'm aware," I said, my voice calm. "There's been a mistake." "There is no mistake, ma'am," the second guard said, moving to block the doorway. "You are specifically barred. We're going to have to ask you to return to the elevator." I didn't move. I looked from the first guard to the second. "You're correct. I am specifically barred." "My husband, Gregory Thorne, the man in there celebrating his birthday, gave you that order. Then you understand why you have to leave," the first guard said, his patience wearing thin. "No," I said. I took a step closer. "You don't understand. I'm not here as a guest. I'm here as the person who paid for this. The $75,000 venue fee. The champagne you'll all be drinking tonight. The deposit for the band. It was all paid for from a joint account. My account." The guard paused. This was not in his training manual. "My husband," I continued, the words dropping like ice cubes into the silence, "is in the process of committing several felonies. This party is an expenditure related to that fraud. So, I am not just an uninvited wife. I am the primary creditor." Right on cue, the elevator doors dinged open behind me. The guards tensed, shifting their weight, expecting a fight. Elias Vance stepped out. He was not wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing his gray, double-breasted suit of armor. He looked, as he always did, like the most expensive and dangerous man in any room. Behind him, two younger, equally sharp men in identical dark suits stepped out, each carrying a heavy, immaculate leather briefcase. They were not bodyguards. They were process servers. Elias walked past the guards as if they were furniture, stopping directly beside me. He didn't look at them. He looked at me, and then at the closed doors to the ballroom, from which we could hear the faint sound of Gregory's voice. "Ma'am, who is this?" the head guard demanded, his authority completely gone. Elias turned, pulling a small embossed card from his jacket pocket. "Elias Vance. I am legal counsel for Mrs. Thorne. These gentlemen," he gestured to the servers, "are officers of the court. We are here on official legal business." He then looked at me. "Are you ready?" "Maya." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the doors. Elias looked back at the stunned security guard. "Open them." He didn't ask. He commanded. And the guard, his hand shaking, reached for the handle. Elias gave me a slight nod. "We're with her." Inside the ballroom, Gregory was at his peak. He was radiant, holding his champagne flute high, basking in the glow of the spotlights and the adoration of the crowd. He turned to Chloe, his smile so wide it looked like it might crack his face. A new beginning requires honesty. He boomed into the microphone. And for years, I've felt. He never finished. The two massive, ornate doors at the back of the ballroom slammed open. They were not pushed, they were thrown, crashing against the interior walls with a sound like a thunderclap. The string quartet died on a single strangled high note. Every conversation, every whispered aside, stopped. The sudden, suffocating silence was a physical thing. 200 of Austin's most powerful people turned as one, their faces a sea of shocked, questioning masks. I stood in the center of the doorway. The red of my dress was a wound in the room's soft, golden light. I did not move. I just stood, letting them look, letting them absorb the impossibility of my presence. Elias Vance was a shadow at my right shoulder, flanked by his two associates, their briefcases held like weapons. On the stage, Gregory froze. His smile was still plastered on his face, a rictus of joy that had not yet processed the terror. His eyes, wide and confused, met mine. Beside him, Chloe made the only sound in the entire vast room. Her hand, clutching a small fork, went limp. The silver fork slipped from her fingers and clattered onto her porcelain dessert plate. The clink-skitter ring was obscene, a piercing violation of the silence, amplified by the microphone in front of her. Maya, Gregory's voice. It was a dry, breathless croak. But the microphone was live, and it blasted his confusion, his panic, to every corner of the room. He blinked, as if I were a hallucination. Maya, he said again, louder, the word cracking. What? What are you doing here? He forced a laugh, a jerky, terrified sound. You're supposed to be in Santa Fe. The words hung in the air, a public, amplified confession of his lie. I saw the blood drain from his face as he realized what he had just admitted to everyone. I began to walk. My heels clicked on the marble floor, a slow, deliberate metronome. Click, click, click. Each step was a hammer blow. I walked past the tables of our friends, their mouths open, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. Good evening, Gregory, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the absolute silence, it carried perfectly. It was calm. It was clear. I canceled my trip. Elias and his team moved with me, a phalanx of dark suits behind my red dress. I decided I couldn't miss your big event, I continued, my eyes never leaving his. I wouldn't want to miss this special announcement you've been planning. The shock finally broke, and Gregory reacted, not as a husband, but as a cornered animal. Security! He roared, pointing at me, his hand shaking. Security! Get her out! She is not supposed to be here! Get her out of here! Now! The two guards from the lobby finally rushed in, their faces red, furious at having been made to look foolish. They moved to grab my arms. Ma'am, you are trespassing. You have to leave. They never touched me. Elias Vance stepped in front of me, a physical wall of tailored gray wool. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He held up the thick, court-sealed packet of documents. Stop, he commanded. The guards froze. We are legal counsel for Mrs. Maya Thorne, Elias announced, his voice slicing through the room, directed at the guards but meant for the crowd. We are here on official business to serve these documents. If you lay one hand on my client, or any member of my team, I will personally have you arrested for obstruction of justice and felony assault. He held the documents higher. We have a legal right to be here. Now, step aside. The guards looked back at Gregory, their expressions pleading for guidance. But Gregory was mute, a statue of sweat and terror, trapped in the spotlight. They stepped aside. Elias turned to me and nodded. Go on, Maya. I adjusted the cuff of my dress. I stepped around the humiliated guards. Elias and I, with the two process servers flanking us, resumed our walk. The path was clear. We walked the final 10 yards to the stage, a slow, deliberate funeral procession, directly toward my husband and his mistress. We stopped at the base of the steps, looking up at them. They were trapped, high above the crowd, with nowhere to run. Elias Vance did not wait for an invitation. He ascended the 2 small steps to the stage, walking past the cowering, pearl-white figure of Chloe Vance. He moved with a speed that was terrifying in its precision. Gregory, stunned and blinking in the spotlight, was still holding the microphone. Elias took it from his limp, unresisting hand. He did not grab it. He simply removed it, as if taking a dangerous object from a child. Elias turned to the silent, breathless room. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he announced. His voice, amplified, was a gavel strike. "My apologies for this interruption. This party is temporarily suspended for a matter of official legal service." The entire room seemed to lean forward. From the back, near the bar, I saw a single bright camera flash go off. Sarah Jensen had her shot. Elias turned from the crowd and faced my husband. He held up the thick, court-sealed packet. "Gregory Thorne," he said, and the name echoed across the silent room. "You are hereby served with an emergency temporary restraining order, freezing all personal and corporate assets, effective immediately. These assets are frozen pending a hearing on charges of felony-level embezzlement, fraudulent conveyance, and gross breach of fiduciary duty." A single collective gasp, a wave of 200 people inhaling at once. "What?" Chloe shrieked, the sound high and animal. She lunged forward. "What are you talking about, Greg? You said she couldn't touch us. You said she didn't know anything." Her voice, her words, her admission were all captured by the still live microphone. Elias did not even look at her. He merely gestured with his chin to one of his associates, who stepped onto the stage and calmly served Chloe her own packet of papers. "Ms. Chloe Vance," Elias said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You are hereby served with an asset recovery order. The Austonian condominium, the 2024 Lexus convertible, and all associated cash transfers have been identified as proceeds of embezzled marital funds. They are to be vacated and surrendered by noon tomorrow." She just stared at the papers, her mouth open, her new future dissolving in her hands. Gregory finally found his voice. It was not the smooth, confident baritone of a CEO. It was a raw, guttural roar of pure rage. "Maya!" he screamed, his face a terrifying mask of crimson and purple. You did this. What did you do?" He lunged toward me, but Elias, a man 20 years his senior, simply put a firm hand on his chest and stopped him cold. I walked to the stage. I stepped up, the red of my dress brushing against his stupid, custom tuxedo. I took the microphone from Elias's hand. I looked at my husband. I looked into his wild, uncomprehending eyes. The Arctic calm was still there. I was a surgeon about to make the final, perfect incision. "You asked me what I did, Gregory," I said. My voice, amplified, was clear and cold. It did not shake. "But the question is, what did you do?" "You asked where your 50th birthday present was." I leaned in, just a little. "This is it. You wanted to replace me," I said, my voice resonating with a terrifying, absolute calm. "You wanted a new beginning. You wanted to stand on this stage, in front of all our friends, and announce your new partner. You wanted to take our company, the one I funded, and make it your company. You wanted to serve me divorce papers on Sunday, leaving me with nothing but a mortgaged house and public humiliation. So, my gift to you, Gregory, is freedom." He was staring at me, his chest heaving, his life burning down around him, all in the bright, warm spotlight he had craved. "It's the freedom you wanted," I said softly. "You are free. You are free from me. You are free from my money. And, as of the judge's order, you are free from the company you built on my father's legacy and your own lies." I turned from him, A man I no longer knew. A ghost. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the board members, their faces ashen. "By the way," I said, my voice lifting to address all of them, "for those of you who are shareholders, Vector Shift Dynamics is now officially under investigation for criminal fraud related to the Omnicorp acquisition. I'd advise you all to call your lawyers. I turned back to Gregory. He had crumpled, his hands on his knees, his perfect tuxedo jacket bunched up. "Happy birthday, Gregory." I let the microphone fall from my hand. It hit the stage with a thud and a violent shriek of feedback that echoed his scream. I turned my back on him. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked, my head held high, in my perfect red dress, down the steps and through the center of the silent, shocked room. I walked out the massive doors, into the lobby, and I did not look back, leaving him alone on his stage, finally, completely, and utterly replaced. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are listening from, so please drop a comment below and let's connect. Share your thoughts on what happened, and if you want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. It would also mean the world to me if you hit the hype button to support this story and help it be heard by more people.